Well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to today's Adweek webinar. Today's topic of discussion will be how to supercharge your data with AI. I'm Ryan Hoover, the Vice President of the Branded Studio here at Adweek. I want to thank you for joining today's webinar sponsored by Resonate. Today's presentation should go somewhere in the 30 to 35 minute range, after which we should have time for audience Q&A. So if at any point you have a question for one of our speakers, just use the Q&A tool beneath the video window on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as possible by the end of the presentation. Also, it's not too late to invite your colleagues to join us for today's webinar. About 15 minutes ago, you received a final reminder email from us. And there you'll find a link to the webinar registration page that you can share with your colleagues. There's still plenty of time to join us. But if they can't, or if you'd like to revisit our discussion at a later date, today's webinar is being recorded. The on-demand recording will be available to all registrants via link, which will be provided later today in your email. And if you'd like a PDF of today's slide deck, you can also find that in the event resources area beneath the video window on your screen. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, definitely check out the full slate of Adweek webinars at adweek.com/webinars. Now, let me introduce you to today's speakers. We're happy to be joined by Dean De La Pena and Grace Hall. Dean is the Vice President of Data Strategy and SaaS Platform at Resonate. With over 16 years of product leadership experience, Dean continues to push the boundaries of actionable customer intelligence and insights with unparalleled AI-powered privacy-safe data and technology at Resonate. Grace is an AI product manager specializing in behavioral data and machine learning applications. She's passionate about AI innovation and is exploring applications that drive better marketing outcomes through personalization while contributing to the innovation flywheel at Resonate. So, welcome, Dean and Grace. Dean, I'll kick it over to you now.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ryan. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We really appreciate the time that you're spending with us today. I really want to start out our conversation with a note on why we're all here, right? We talk a lot about data and how we use data, why data is important. And it boils down to the fact that the world is changing around us, right? I don't think I need to tell anybody that the economy is tumultuous right now and people are changing their preferences at a rate that we have never seen. And what that implies in a lot of ways is that loyalty is waning. Loyalty is something that we all chase after. We all chase after it because we have loyal relationships with the consumers that we're marketing to. We have better lifetime value. We have better relationships that lead to the ability to engage those customers where they are, right? And loyalty it is a fact that we're starting to see that really get impacted, right? So if I look at some of the statistics around loyalty and how consumers are engaging with the brands that they've historically been so close with, we're starting to see people change their preferences, change their behaviors, change their buying behaviors. 45% are starting to look at cheaper or alternative brands relative to the goods that they would purchase today. And 22% are looking at the same products that they're buying and buying them from different stores or buying them online because they're able to get better discounts or because the experience that they have shopping in different places is better. Ultimately, people are starting to shop around, right? And they're reacting to a lot of the stimulus in the marketplace with change. Change can be scary. Change can also be an opportunity. And so as I think a little bit about how we as marketers respond to that change in loyalty, it comes down to personalization, right? And I don't think I'm telling anybody anything that we don't know, right? Personalization obviously has been such an important topic for us over the last 5 to 10 years. But that's never been truer than today, right? If I think about personalization as a panacea for loyalty and trying to re-earn that loyalty or keep those customers, or to try and think about how I engage customers that used to be loyal to a different brand and now might be in the market or interested in trying out alternatives, it's good for us to reflect that 80% of people indicate that they're preferring brands that are offering personalized experiences. That's a staggering number, right? That's a completely different way consumers engage with brands today in a way that they did not, 10, 20, 30 years ago, where we didn't have the ability to personalize to the same extent. And that matters, right? From a monetary perspective, we're seeing 50% more spend when consumers experience personalization with those brands because of the way in which they built that relationship, the engagement, right? They're more excited about the product. They're more excited about the long-term value, the long-term relationship that they build. So again, nothing new, but I do think that it really underscores that in a time where change is even faster, like I think every year we say this, right? Change is faster, it's still true. Change is still faster. And even in a world where that change exists and where loyalty is starting to crumble a little bit, personalization remains the key to maintaining those loyal relationships and building new ones with customers that you might be able to engage in a different way. And as we think about personalization then, right, how do we do that? And that's where we bring this back to why we're talking about how we supercharge data with AI, right? Data is the foundation of personalization. It's very difficult to meet consumers where they are and where they want to be if you don't know anything about them. And so as I reflect then on some of the different elements of data and how that focuses on personalization, I think about data-driven decision-making, right? And recognizing that there is a really significant revenue increase by brands when they are using data to drive their personalization versus doing their best to peanut butter their way with their brand specialties towards consumers as they engage, right? There's the consumer insights piece, right? Where it's not just about understanding those consumers where you don't see them. It's also about building in the behavior that they've already had with you as a brand. How are they transacting? How do they engage with you? And how can we consolidate and bring those data points together, right? 92% say that first party data is so critical to the growth that they see as brands through their marketing efforts. And then there's a campaign optimization piece, right? Where everyone's running campaigns. Campaigns obviously are the ticket to driving that personalized experience, driving that engagement, driving those conversions. But do they always add value? And the answer is no, right? Or certainly not to the same extent that they do when you use data as a fundament for those campaigns. And we see that very starkly in the data, right? 3 times as many campaigns drive significant performance improvements when data backs those campaigns to understand, are they being successful? For whom are they being successful? And how do we think about improving who we are targeting and who we are engaging in the future, right? So hopefully with all that, that paints a picture that, look, loyalty is starting to wane a bit, but that's okay, right? We have the tools, provided that we're using AI and data in the right way, to re-engage those customers and to make sure that we are continuing to grow and evolve as brands the way we need to. But that then leads us, of course, to the question: can you afford to have subpar data, right? Hopefully, we all agree at this point that the answer is no. But to make that, to put that in stark relief, you might have a problem. Right. And it's notable that 92% of retailers say they deliver great personalized experiences. Only half of their customers feel that way. Right. That's a huge gap. Right. I think we as marketers tend to believe that we're doing a better job of that personalization than maybe we actually are. And so it becomes even more incumbent upon us to do this the right way and to recognize that the data of yesterday is not necessarily driving personalization to the extent that it needs to today and tomorrow. And so that's where AI comes in. We'll talk a little bit about how we've been successful in supporting our clients, and as we go through this, right, I'll paint the picture a bit for how data works in this environment. Paint the picture a little bit around how you can use data to drive some of these same experiences. And we'll also make this a little bit more tangible for you from the perspective of how we've done work with our clients and how they've been successful in unlocking this. So let's think a little bit then. Imagine a world where you know your consumers where you don't see them today, where you can identify that unknown visitor before they come to your website, before you reach out to them with digital marketing, before you reach out to them with direct mail. You know who they are. You know what their demographics are. You know what their intent is. What's their propensity to buy? what are their product preferences, right? What are they in the market for at any given moment? And how do they think about their purchasing more broadly? Do they shop with your competitors? I would love to know that, right? Who is it that we can engage where we know they're in the market for our product? We know that with the shift in loyalty, there's an opportunity to capture the attention and the engagement of that consumer because we know they shop with their competitors, right? Are they your next best customer? Are they the right person to spend that extra marketing dollar on as you think about expanding your campaigns and expanding your reach? And which of your customer segments do they align with, right? We all have a strategy. We all know where our brand is strongest. We all know who we're trying to engage. Do these customers, do the available customers that you can reach out to with your hard-earned marketing dollars, do they belong to those segments, right? So for all of these items together, not just separately, what if you could know more about your customer and be able to use that data really intelligently and really easily in activating your marketing in your media? And that's where we come down to AI, right? We've talked a little bit about how data supports understanding these really important questions, how they tie back not just to your engagement with your consumers, but also your bottom line. And at the end of the day, what we've seen in the marketplace over the last, really just like 18 to 24 months is this explosion, of course, of AI. And again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right? This is something that has been a very hot topic in the market for a long time. But what's true about AI is that it can make your data, the data that's available to you for marketing, so much more powerful. And we see that as we reflect on the results that consumers and clients in general, companies in general have had, and our clients have had in specific, where we're making much more accurate precisions today than we ever used to, right? AI-powered high precision models are now capable of predicting customer behavior with up to 85% accuracy. That's an MIT study. Decision-making is better. Where you're using AI for decision-making, companies are 19% more likely to outperform their competitors who are not. And you have better resource allocation, right? Precise AI models are improving your efficiency of spend by 30%. And I want to stop on that one for a minute. That's a staggering number, right? If you had 30% more marketing dollars through the intelligent use of AI, and how AI can supercharge the data that you bring to bear to drive these high-powered, personalized experiences, to be able to reach out to the right consumers at every moment and to maximize the efficiency of your marketing. 30% more marketing dollars. Think about what you can do with that, right? That's a big number. So I'm going to leave that there for a moment. I'm going to turn it over to Grace here because I want her to walk you through some of the work that Resonate has done with our own clients and the value that they've achieved and the tactical ways in which they've utilized this kind of AI supercharged data to drive these sorts of results. And then I'll take it out a little bit with how we are thinking about that more generally and where we've seen success. So Grace, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dean. Boy, that was great. And good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. So yes, a couple of shameless plugs here, but after all, I'm a product manager and I'm very proud of our product. So bear with me here. And let's dive into some compelling case studies. First up, I'd like to highlight how AI-powered data solutions can revolutionize real-time website personalization, which Dean sort of touched on. We'll explore how a Fortune 500 financial services brand leveraged our solution to drive higher conversions, enhance visitor experiences, and ultimately increase revenue. So let's dive in and get started. So many brands face a common challenge. How do you personalize web experiences for first-time visitors when you have little to no data on them? Without real-time insights, conversion rates are stagnant, visitor engagement is shallow, and traditional IP-based recognition leaves, critical gaps. And the result, of course, is missed opportunities to capture and convert high-value customers. But there's a smarter way. To overcome these challenges, we've introduced an AI-powered data layer that enables real-time visitor recognition, even before behavioral data is collected. By integrating psychographic, shopper behaviors, and intent-based insights, we move beyond basic IP-based recognition to enable hyper-personalized experiences from the very first visit. And with access to over 250 million dynamically updated consumer profiles, our solution adapts in real time, ensuring visitors receive the right message at the right moment for maximum engagement. And the impact in this case study was immediate. This is the power of AI-driven personalization in action. This leading financial services provider implemented the solution and saw a 20% increase in premium product conversions, a 50% boost in real-time personalization, which means significantly more people got a relevant, targeted experience the moment they landed on the site. And they saw a 33% improvement in the speed of delivering tailored experiences. So these results show how AI doesn't just enhance engagement, it accelerates decision-making, optimizes customer interactions, and directly fuels revenue growth. Imagine what this could mean for your brand. All right, let's talk about direct mail. Yes, it still exists. And no, it's not just a way for boomers to get grocery coupons. In fact, when combined with AI-powered data, direct mail becomes a powerhouse for market leadership and revenue growth. In this case study, we'll explore how a leading direct mail provider leveraged advanced segmentation and behavioral insights to outpace competitors, optimize performance, and drive real business impact in industries like healthcare and home services. So buckle up. This is direct mail, but with a serious digital edge. So what was the challenge here? Well, targeting in direct mail isn't as easy as Dear Resident. Today's brands need precision, but many struggle with complex customer segmentation because households don't all think the same way, latency in traditional data sources because waiting months for audience insights lengthens that time to value, which is the opposite of what we want, custom models versus generic solutions because one size fits all is the enemy of personalization. And finally, budget constraints and leadership hesitation because investing in new data solutions, especially AI, can be tricky. The technology is new and not well understood. With these challenges, direct mail campaigns risk missing the mark, wasting budget, and being left unopened, literally. So now here's where we can shake things up. Instead of relying on outdated segmentation, we injected AI-powered consumer intelligence into the mix. We refined targeting so that healthcare campaigns didn't just go to older adults, but to people actually considering healthcare services. We built flexible audience models that fit the brand's exact needs. We reduced campaign latency by months, making direct mail faster and more responsive because, yes, even with direct mail, that's possible. And because we knew budget concerns were real, we structured a commitment-based revenue share so clients saw results before making massive investments into this unknown AI tech. And the result, more relevance, more speed, and more ROI. And let's talk about those numbers. 22% lift in sales compared to 3 of their biggest competitors. That's not just winning, it's dominating. And a 30% faster time to market, meaning campaigns launched quicker and rolled out to Q1 from Q2 seamlessly. So if anyone tells you direct mail is dead, tell them this: AI-powered data just gave it a second life and a serious competitive edge. Because when direct mail is smart, it's not just snail mail, it's a precision revenue engine. Now, Dean, back to you.
So Grace, thank you. I'd like to tell you that I'm more excited than ever about all of the direct mail that I get into my physical mailbox. I'm not, but I have responded to more of it than I ever have in the past. So somebody's got my number. All right, thank you very much. So folks, again, thank you for spending the time with us today. I want to take it out by talking a little bit about, with those examples firmly in mind, what are we doing? And how does the power that AI brings to data improve a more personalized world, create a more personalized world, right? That's really what we are here to do as Resonate, to power a more personalized world with unparalleled consumer data, intelligence, and technology. What does that mean, right? It means that it takes a village. It's not just the data. It's not just the knowing. You have to be able to take that knowing. You have to be able to know better, right? That's where the technology and the AI comes in. So the data gets better and better as we apply that technology and that intelligence. But you also have to be able to action on it. You have to be able to do something with it. So, some of us grew up with G.I. Joe. Knowing is half the battle, right? The other half is actually doing something with that data. And I want to talk a little bit about that too. So we at Resonate ultimately are focusing on AI-powered consumer intelligence solutions for retailers and other brands, right? So starting with Resonate Elements, we have 15,000 attributes connected to over 1 billion devices that we make available and really meet our clients where they are, right? One of the truisms of marketing today, like I remember a world where it was pretty much about rudimentary A/B testing and regression models, right? And we have blown past that in the last decade, and especially in the last 18 months, right? We're no longer in that world. We are no longer in Kansas. So with that in mind, right, making sure that we can make that data available to our clients and to different brands who are looking to unlock that power and meet them where they are. Do they need a platform that makes it really easy to understand who their audiences are and activate that? Do they need what we call our proprietary AI, Ray, right? Do they need a Ray-enabled model that they can incorporate into their own environment as they think about activation on their side? Do they need the data, right? And can we actually empower, their CRM and CDP with a much richer understanding of intent and values of the customer that allow them to really unlock that efficiency that we were describing at the front? And that's what it boils down to, right? It boils down to understanding your customer in all the different ways I described. And put most simply, perhaps, it's not just who they are factually, but it's also what do they value at this moment in time when you can engage them? What do they intend to do now, in the future, right? And how do they think? What are their psychographics? What do they care about? And that's where, when I think about what's most important, right, sometimes I actually like to reflect on AI and how we're thinking about AI by taking a much more human-centric lens to it, right? For any individual consumer, one of our friends or family members, someone that we know, right? If we're thinking about how do I engage this person? How do I understand what you standing in front of me is interested in purchasing, the experience that you want me to create for you? I need to know where you're coming from. I need to know what you care about right now. And on the basis of that history that I have with you as a person and the conversation that we're engaging in at this moment, I can make some pretty strong assumptions and some pretty good understanding of where you're headed, right? And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing at scale. That's what AI brings to the table, is for us to be able to do that, not just for the individual that we're having a conversation with, but for thousands or millions of consumers that are engaging with your brand. They're having that conversation with your brand, and they're doing a whole bunch of stuff where you don't necessarily have that visibility. AI allows us then to do the same one-on-one conversation at a scale of millions or billions of consumers across billions and trillions of different behavioral data points. That's all it is. Of course, nothing is worth doing that is not very difficult. And so we got to do it right. And that's where Ray comes in, right? That's where the right AI modeling approaches and the right tools enable us to create that best-in-class intent data that unlocks all the value that I just described. So let's talk a little bit about Resonate's core-powered data solutions with Ray, right? It starts with the inputs, billions of observations. A mentor of mine, probably 12 years ago at this point, we were working with billions of transactions a year for different retailers or financial services companies or different brands. And he liked to talk about how that was kind of big data, right? Billion, no big deal. $1 billion per year, no big deal, right? And the reason he talked about it being kind of big data is because it was kind of big data. It wasn't the kind of billions and trillions of signals a year that we're now capable of unlocking to really help understand your consumer base at an individual level and be able to actually interact with them in a more intelligent, targeted way, right? So it starts with 30 billion daily observations. That's daily, with the offline consumer data and the understanding of who the customer is, along with billions of devices that we can engage. And we use very sophisticated predictive modeling techniques and AI through Ray to ultimately create the vector data that lets us say, for any given use case, and the inputs rather, that we have, the proprietary ground truth that Resonate brings, where we know that certain customers have these intent characteristics, we know certain customers have these values, we can then help our clients downstream have that same understanding of their own consumers where they are. And so ultimately being able to say, look, we're looking for who's churning, who's your next best customer, what's the next best action, right? And being able to actually create the custom outputs that help you understand who those people are, and then give you the tools directly through our predictive modeling capabilities and AI to be able to actually go out and interact with those customers in the right way, right? Reduce the churn, retain your customers, improve that loyalty number. Don't be the ones that are ultimately seeing their customers try different brands. Build that engagement and build that relationship much more strongly, because you know exactly whom you want to do that with, and you know exactly what the right message is. And at the end of the day, right, like I said, it's not easy to do it. And being both nimble and having the capability of doing this in days and weeks, and also with, again, that deep understanding of what the customer cares about, right? Having the conversation with the customer, knowing what their intent is, knowing what their values are, goes well beyond what other players are capable of providing in this moment. And so that's the goal, right? We power performance personalization. It all comes back to personalization. Why do we supercharge our data with AI? Because that lets us connect better with the consumer, engage better, drive more loyalty, personalize more effectively. That's it. And when we do that, we see our own clients with 20% increase in ROI, 35% improvement in customer engagement, and a 40% boost in customer retention and lifetime value. These things matter. There's value in being able to personalize in this way. So with that, I will turn it over to Q&A. We really appreciate the time. Thank you for spending it with us, and hopefully we were able to illustrate a few ways in which marketers out there are using their data to improve personalization.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dean and Grace, for providing us those insights and innovations. We have some time to take some questions, and we'll get to as many as we can over the next 5 to 10 minutes. If we don't get to your question, we can always make sure that your questions get forwarded over to the team here at Resonate, and they can reply offline directly to you. I'm going to start with this question, Dean, for you. What are the biggest leaps you're seeing in 2025 on how marketers are using predictive AI and AI-powered data?
Ryan, that's a phenomenal question. Thank you. Let me answer this in two ways, actually. I think the first is I want to draw a distinction between predictive and generative AI, right? There's been a lot of discussion about generative AI, how it helps people make decisions. And that's one part of the answer to the question, right? Where clients are increasingly able to, look at their decisions, look at their data using generative AI. So the ChatGPTs or the Geminis of the world, right? And get kind of a clear and concise answer on different questions. But the predictive AI, right? The deep learning models, neural nets, how we think about taking billions or trillions of data points at scale and turning that into something really digestible so that we understand what we're trying to do in microcosm. We know the actions we need to take. We know who we need to take those actions with. That's a completely different classification of AI. And that's really where we're starting to see the best marketers push the envelope. So as I look across the last, really 2-3 years, there's a lot more nonlinear machine learning models and AI models that are coming into play, right? And I don't want to go too far down the technical road here, but suffice to say that we didn't have the capability to look at that many billions of data points all that long ago. And now, with the advent of machine learning modeling and AI at the fingertips of data scientists that are working hand in hand with their marketing colleagues, we're starting to see things like vector data become really useful, right? Where taking embedded vectors or embeddings and using those directly as signals that humans can't understand, right? But machines can, and can be much more targeted and much more profitability driving in terms of how they're guiding marketing efforts and helping to kind of target and activate against the right customers.
Thank you for that. The next question I'm going to kick over to Grace. Really, when we start thinking about consumers in the modern age, I think Dean said this in his opening comments, things are shifting faster than ever before. So how can brands leverage AI-driven data solutions to stay agile as those shifts happen? How do you anticipate customer needs and really deliver on real-time personalization at scale with those market shifts?
Yeah, really great question, Ryan. Thank you. So, I mean, the way I sort of think about this moment in time, I'm reminded of, when Amazon took over as the big behemoth with marketplaces, and Google showed up with SEO, and they, both these major platforms were, pushing marketers and especially digital marketers to think smarter. And even in their own, if you were a direct to consumer company and you had your own website at the time, how can you look more like Google? How could you chase after that experience? And so the way that I think about this moment in time, I think now, like, the TikToks, Netflix, all these big brands that bring this personalization, YouTube, for example, into the forefront. They have, just like Google and Amazon did for consumers with the shopping experiences, these major platforms are doing for consumers with personalization. So consumers are just becoming, it's an expectation. It's almost table stakes. And if they show up to a website, or if they enter into a space and it just doesn't feel right for them, and if they don't feel like it's personalized to their experience, they will leave, they will bounce, right? So AI is the way to answer that call. I mean, AI powered data is the solution. It gives the predictive power. We've seen results with our clients. So, I hope that answers your question, Ryan.
I think you did great. This other one's kind of a follow-up to all the learnings here, and goes back to the case study that you talked about. When we talk about industry-specific needs for, say, that direct mail campaign for health services, do you see that success being able to be replicated across different industries? But the question asker asked specifically about CPG in the health and beauty space.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So that just would depend on, on the modeling and which data provider you work with. Shameful plug here, but again, product manager, proud of our products. At Resonate, our models are trained on vast amounts of data that span many verticals. And so for, if you work with a vendor like Resonate, who has models that are trained across all these verticals, then yes, what I laid out could work, in many verticals. So sorry for the shameless plug, but it just, it would depend on which data provider that you're working with. Were their AI models trained in that verticals? At Resonate, we are many verticals. We have retail, we have CPG, we have travel. So sorry again, apologies again for the shameless plug.
Sound good. It's fun to be excited about the products that you're working on and the success that you're seeing with your clients. I think this might be for both of you, but kind of want to talk about, every AI innovation call. I am on and internally here at Adweek, there is this last little back end of consideration. What should we be considering when we're talking about all the positive innovations of AI? What's still evolving? What needs to be better? We talk about the keyword hallucinations in these models. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the considerations of how you address those with your clients.
Sounds great. Grace, I'm going to take this one. I love this question. Where aren't we there yet, right? And I think the answer is, I feel very strongly. So first off, I'm obviously very excited about AI and the power that it brings, right? So I am one of the people who is optimistic about the value that it brings to the marketing world and how it actually helps us build a more human connection, right? Like that's something that I think gets lost in all this. As marketers, we're trying to build that human connection, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and how it helps us do that. But I think it does, because it makes it easier for us to build those relationships. Where does it fall short? Well, it's a tool, right? It's a tool like anything else. And, where I would say it falls most short is when people view that tool as being valuable in all ways, right? So let's get real basic, right? I have a screwdriver, and that screwdriver is really helpful for screwing screws into, walls and stuff. You can tell I spend a lot of time with tools. But at the end of the day, I can use it as a hammer too, right? I have actually used a screwdriver that was lying around to open up packages where a little X-Acto knife would have been much better, right? I can use it for a lot of things that it wasn't meant for. And frankly, it's not very good at those things, right? If I take a screwdriver and I try to hammer a nail into a wall, I'm gonna have trouble. It's not a very good cutting tool. And so that's where I see it falling short the most, is where it's used because it gives you sort of the shiny objects, or it tells you something neat but not useful. And that's where I think, if I think about hallucinations and I think about generative AI, right? And I ask it a question, I get back an answer, and that answer is half wrong, or it's irrelevant to the question that I was asking. I had a moment where I asked a model, hey, can I just get 4 images that speak to this and this for a presentation? And it sent me back 6 images that did not actually relate back to my prompt. And it asserted to me that those 6 images were 4 images, right? Like pure hallucination, obvious, clear as day. And that still happens, right? And that happens especially with generative models, where those generative models are there to predict the next word in the sentence that sounds the best, right? Or that the model sees most often as it's looked through trillions of data points of information. And it's when you're using a large language model to build strategic decisions or to build a targeting model, right? Without clarity in the transparency, without an understanding of how it got to that view, it can be hard to believe. And sometimes it can be hard to believe because it's not correct, right? And so that's where having the clarity, the back-end transparency, and the model, the predictive AI, right? The neural net modeling and the work, the analytics that we bring to bear, that's where that's so important, because we allow you to understand that consumer and then actually go and market on that basis and see the results that we're describing, right? And to prove that out such that, at the end of the day, right, if the tools that we're using, and using in the right way, by the way, right, in ways that don't hallucinate, if those tools weren't giving us the right answer, then we're not going to see the marketing results that we see every day with our clients, right? Yeah. And so just to sum all that up, because it was a lot, yes, there are limitations. Yes, AI is not, the be-all, end-all that's going to solve all of our problems. What it is, however, is a very powerful way to understand more about the consumer, and then used responsibly and used correctly, we can empirically, we can try it out and see all of the value that we are collectively bringing as marketers get smarter and smarter about how they target engagement.
That's great. We have time for one last question. I'm going to back end your comment talking about value that you add to your clients. And this question is specific about unlocking ROAS and LTV. The question is about how marketers are using AI compared with true demographics. So are marketers really using the powerful insights that AI can provide to the effect that tried and true demographics used to provide to them?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer, the very short answer is yes, absolutely, right? And that gets back to how I was describing understanding so deeply another person, just doing it at scale with, millions of your best friends, right? Just because I'm walking down the street and I know that somebody is, between the ages of 30 and 40 and, probably identify as male, right? Even that's an assumption. That doesn't tell me that much. It gives me a sense, but it doesn't tell me that much about what they care about, right? It matters much more. Like if I wanted, as an example, to make a snap judgment about somebody walking down the street, about what clothes they care about, like what retailers they shop at, much better for me to see what they're wearing, right? Are you in your athleisure? Are you wearing Lululemon? Well, I know for a fact that you've purchased a Lululemon, right? Are you walking into Vuori right now to, mix up your brands? Maybe you are. Or if I'm seeing somebody walk into the gym, right? I know they work out. No matter what street clothes they walk in, I know that they're probably buying something athletic. And so being able, again, in this like very simple interpersonal one-on-one way, what am I basing these thoughts on? What am I basing these expectations on? I'm basing them not on demographics, but I'm basing them on intent, or I'm understanding their behavior. And based on their behavior, I am taking a really good look at what their values probably are, right? And of course, we actually have more ground truth on values directly. We ask. And that allows us to be very direct and very clear about values and intent and everything else. But the point that I'm driving to more generally is the demographics really don't tell you that much. They're valuable, they're important, but it's really the intent, the values, the motivations, the psychographics, and everything that comes from how people behave that drives marketing engagement so powerfully.
Well, thank you, Dean. Thank you, Grace, for your time today, for the presentation, for addressing some of these questions. Some final reminders from Adweek. Make sure you download the slides in the Event Resources tab and check your email for a link to the on-demand recording later today. As I noted, if we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure we send those over to our presenters today so that they can address them directly. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, we ask that you check out full slate of Adweek webinars on our calendar at adweek.com/webinars. Again, a big thank you to Dean De La Pena and Grace Hall. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. We look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming webinar soon. Thank you.